everybody. It is my great pleasure to introduce our Anna Brant today. She is the Global Director for Guest Research and Experience Innovation at ultra-luxury Dorchester Collection company. Anna, thank you for coming and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm actually thrilled to speak with all the students where I started my journey. So thank you very much for having me.
I was just going to say that. Thank you for coming. And Anna is our graduated student, both from the bachelor's degree program and also from master's degree. And since then, Anna, you've continued your education with Stanford, I believe, at Cornell, and also with Pepperdine Graziadio. We will touch upon all those things. So Anna is somebody who really believes in education. And she started by working at Walt Disney Company and then moved herself up to Dorchester Collection, where she practically invented her job. And the leadership was brave enough, and I would say visionary enough, to accept that proposal. We will learn all about that. It is such a treat to have you here, Anna. So thank you once again for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're right, and the pleasure is all ours. And speaking of pleasure, I would also like to introduce our students today, our senior students. Elena Bergin, hospitality student, originally from Switzerland, studying in Dubrovnik. Hello, Elena. Also Mona. Mona is our student, also senior student from Zagreb, studying in Dubrovnik. And also Nera, she's our Dalmatian student studying here. So nice bunch. And so I'm done talking now, and I will turn over the mic to Mona. Mona, over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Professor. So good afternoon once again. I would like to first off say that I'm very honored to be here, and I'm very excited for this interview. So to kick it off, you have been a longtime associate and friend of RIT. So can you please tell us something about your background and the path that led you to your current job?
Absolutely. I think RIT was a destiny, and looking back, it was certainly a catapult in the pursuit of my professional legacy. I wish I can say it was all planned, but it wasn't. It was truly spontaneous, and I think sometimes the best things in life do happen spontaneously. I started at RIT in Dubrovnik, where you all are, the best city in the world. And I think I was a third generation of what was that called, ACMT. I was very fortunate that I studied in Dubrovnik before it became massively popular. And I remember having all the luxuries of Stradun to myself and my classmates. It was simply incredible. I think RIT really enabled me access to an internship that changed my life, which was at Mr. Nikolic said, Walt Disney World. I took a year off after my sophomore year, that gap year, and I spent that year in Disney. And that experience was simply incredible. Certainly, adjusting to the lifestyle of the United States, but more importantly, I gained insights into what makes the most amazing organizational culture in corporate America. And you could probably argue that Disney is on the top of that list. And of course, besides incredible lifestyle in Dubrovnik and opportunities for internship, I really and truly admired RIT's academic curriculum. We had an opportunity to learn from great scholars as well as legends in the industry. So after my junior year, I transferred to RIT Mothership in Rochester, New York for my senior year, where I graduated. And I guess perhaps because it was the experience and Disney and understanding the real world that's coming around the corner, I decided to pursue my master's degree at RIT. Dr. Jim Jacobs, who is an incredible scholar and a brilliant mind, was in charge of design and development of what I think at the time was quite newly created Masters in Service Leadership and Innovation. And after meeting with Dr. Jacobs to learn more about the content of the degree, I knew it was certainly meant for me. I loved the idea that behind service quality and adoption of tools and concepts from manufacturing world to the hospitality industry. I thought there was a pretty unique way to approach hospitality. And after I graduated, I was looking for a job in the company which has a discipline like the one that I learned during my master's. And that's when I found my first love, which was the Ritz Carlton Hotel Company. Ritz Carlton embodied all quality I was looking for. You know, it was aesthetically pleasing, it was well designed, details mattered, perfection was appreciated, curiosity was encouraged, and more importantly, it was done very elegantly. And if you remember, one of the founding fathers said, "This is where the ladies and gentlemen serve ladies and gentlemen." So not only did I really kind of related myself with the discipline, but I kind of melded in the organizational structure and organizational culture and loved the way they do things. And during my journey at Ritz Carlton, I met another incredible leader, Dr. John Timmerman, who at the time was serving as a vice president of quality, obviously a big job in the corporate office. John was long recognized. He actually recognized my unique talents long time ago, and always joked that I get things done with a vision in one hand and then strategic velvet hammer in the other one. And it was really under John's leadership that I created my first professional milestone. And this was an innovation project for the company that I worked for at the time, the hotel that I worked for at the time, which was Ritz Carlton in Boston. And that particular project served as the foundation of my master thesis, which finally allowed me to graduate. I won't bore you with the details of what it was, because from this perspective, certainly it doesn't look all that great. It's pretty basic, but back then it was really, really cool. And the result, I would say, was pretty incredible, because John published my project in the American Society of Quality, which was quite an honor for, 26-year-old. John and I remained really, really close friends till this day. John claims that actually it was I who inspired him to pursue additional education. So he decided to enroll in the same program as I did at RIT, Masters of Science in Service Leadership and Innovation. And it was funny, a person that I admire so much, and I was just a college graduate, working an hourly job at Ritz Carlton. It was this big VIP that basically he met Dr. Jim Jacobs, and Dr. Jacobs actually taught John. A few years ago, John got his PhD, and he served as a chief scientist in Gallup. And again, where our relationship continues is he created my recommendation letters for my doctoral studies. And this brings me to my current company, Dorchester Collection, where I was actually recruited by a former leader from Ritz Carlton who joined Dorchester Collection Hotel in New York City, and it was called New York Palace. You may know it better from a location of Gossip Girl. I guess the point of the story here is that it's not the companies that move you forward in your career. It is certainly people you meet on the way. And, RIT has always been intervened with my life, and in relationships and people that I met have kind of, shaped my career and helped me open the doors. After that, I spent 5 years with Ritz Carlton. I met John. John became a lifelong friend, served as a mentor. And at the same time, to close the loop with RIT, I also have to extend my special thanks to our dean, Don Hudspeth, who also wrote a second recommendation letter for my doctoral study. So the point of the story, you never know who will surface in your career in the future. So don't burn bridges, create relationships, nurture them, and be thankful for them.
Dorchester Collection is a very unique hospitality company, one of a kind. Can you please briefly describe the company's philosophy and vision and give us an idea of at least some of the properties in the portfolio?
Absolutely. Dorchester Collection is certainly very unique and incredibly different from many luxury hotel companies. We are a collection of cultural landmarks, such as iconic Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles, Hotel Plaza Athénée in Paris, or the Dorchester in London. Our hotels, I would argue, are built by icons and cultural activists. They're adored by the community and, of course, cherished by the employees. We have been a home to royalty, celebrities, captains of industries, artists, thinkers, politicians, entrepreneurs, aristocracy for many, many years. And I believe our hotels have been featured in countless movies, documentaries, TV shows, and we are always, always followed by media. As an example, Hotel Le Meurice in Paris is 205 years old. Hotel is elegant, she's refined and cultured. She has been the home of Salvatore Dali, who, when unsatisfied with his paintings, would throw them out of the window to Rue Rivoli, and then he called it smash art. The Beverly Hills Hotel is 108. She's glamorous, feminine, fun, a bit mysterious, curvy, and pink. Actually, the city of Beverly Hills was named after the hotel, which was built 2 years before the city was founded. And there is not a celebrity that we know as of today that hasn't stayed or visited the hotel in the past. Marilyn Monroe was regular. Regardless of who she was married to, whether it's Joe DiMaggio or Arthur Miller, she was always there. She also has a bungalow named after her. Elizabeth Taylor, who has a bungalow also named after her, she spent 6 out of 8 honeymoons at Beverly Hills Hotel. Howard Hughes lived there for years, so did Charlie Chaplin. Richard Nixon learned about Watergate in the hotel's famous restaurant, the Polo Lounge. Hotel Plaza Athénée is 107. She's chic, fashionable, drop-dead gorgeous, and flawless. She's haute couture, and she's home to who is who of fashion in Paris. She has been featured in various movies, from Devil Wears Prada, Sex and the City, and most recently, Emily in Paris. And in terms of how we approach our brand and why is it different from other hotels, I believe it's our brand architecture. Dorchester Collection is an umbrella brand which unifies and strengthens the collection. We share common values, organizational culture, valuable guests, intangible brand benefits, our focus to our people, our guests, our strategy that we put the guest in the center of everything we do. What we don't share is the thread counts, china, silverware, standard operating procedures, nor prescriptive service standards. We let our hotels, our people, and our guests be themselves, and we go out of the way to preserve these cultural landmarks in the way which is most authentic to the community that embraces them.
Well, moving on to our third question, as Professor already said, and we also managed to study about you, what is amazing is that you basically invented your job, and at that time, your supervisors bravely and wisely accepted that. So what is your position currently is Global Director for Guest Research and Experience Innovation. So can you tell us what do you do on a daily basis?
Well, the first part of your question, I have to acknowledge I was truly lucky to work for leaders such as Jenny Opera and Helen Smith, who allowed me to be my best and use my strengths in the most productive way. Our CEO, Mr. Christopher Cowdery, always encouraged me to be myself, express myself creatively and professionally, and has supported all my crazy ideas through 3 years. My journey in DC, I would say, has been similar experience as going through college. I entered almost 10 years ago, and I was green and naive, even though I came from this 5-year journey of a big company. As you saw, Dorchester Collection was quite different, and we were doing things differently. But somehow the leadership, just like faculty, sees the potential in you, looks at you the way when you make a mistake, and allows you to pursue your dreams. So I'm really, really deeply grateful to work for leadership who was so open-minded and so supportive. In terms of what I do, well, that's quite a good question. I look at my job as somebody who gives people a purpose at work. I do this through research, insights, strategy, organizational design, I see myself as a creator of a vision that we need to pursue. As a more concrete example, I conduct guest research through various qualitative and quantitative methods. I then translate these insights into business strategy and then kind of re-engineer the operations through the lens of customer centricity that is underpinned by relationship marketing. And I know that I just gave you a lot to think about and a lot to say, but we can deconstruct that at some other time. What does that mean? In terms of how does it look like day to day, it's very simple. I talk to a lot of guests and I talk to a lot of employees. I then pause and I think. I then ponder, analyze, and interpret what I heard. I try to validate my interpretation of what I heard with various stakeholders. And then when I feel that we are on a way that is valuable to the brand, I adjust business strategy, create processes, procedures, and enabler to execute on it. And I think this entire process, the biggest luxury that I have at work is allowing me to think and create relationship with our guests and our employees. Traditional hoteliers are doers by nature, and we like to check off the box. We like to measure our success. How many check-ins did we do? Our, quantitative success in terms of number of covers or RevPAR and things like that. So I'm really, really grateful that in my job, I have the luxury to deepen the relationship with our guests, as well as have time to think and ponder before we execute.
So now that we know a little bit about what you do, we heard more than once that luxury guests are different from the mainstream. So can you please explain or give us a crash course in luxury guest psychology?
Well, maybe you should ask me this question after I finish my dissertation. That's kind of what I dedicated my dissertation to. But I really like that you refer it as psychology, not demographics. And I think that is certainly a step in a really good direction. I'm not sure I'll be able to give you the entire answer, but I'll attempt. First of all, I kind of doubt that there is such thing as a typical luxury consumer, because it's almost like a paradox or an oxymoron. Luxury is so bespoke, so personalized, so unique to a certain individual. So where typical may be a bit misleading. And as evidence suggests, defining consumer behavior based on luxury brand consumption may not be such a good idea. And let me tell you why. Over the past few years, actually almost a year and a half right now, I've been a huge fan of this lady called Elizabeth Currid-Hackard. She's a scholar at USC and a proclaimed urban planner researcher. She recently published a book called The Sum of All Things, The Theory of Aspirational Class. And you being students of RIT and learning about luxury, I'm sure you're familiar with famous Dear Leisure Class by Thorsten Veblen, who defined what the luxury or wealthy at the turn of the century, how they live and their values. So Elizabeth attempted to do the same for that particular class of people in the contemporary settings. Looking back, I don't think her goal as an urban planner was to describe key socioeconomic characteristic of a certain class, but I think that's the beauty of research. It takes you to incredible places that you didn't think before. Anyways, Elizabeth studied consumption of behavior of various socioeconomic classes in Los Angeles, so she can provide concrete advice to urban developers and city officials as to how to develop a certain area. And what she found was really fascinating. Actually, people in high economic brackets, so the upper class, as a percentage of income, spend less on what we call today luxury goods than the middle class, which was certainly fascinating because it's not something that you would necessarily, assume that way. Furthermore, what she found is that the middle class actually increased their consumption of luxury goods, while the ones that are higher class actually decreased, which of course made her think, so what do they spend money on? What do rich people, wealthy people spend money on? So I don't want to spoil her story, you should read a book, but basically the hints are education, experience-driven goods, and services that are making their life easier. So I was very fascinated by one of her examples in the book where actually she tries to define luxury from, today's perspective. And she does it through the story of motherhood and breastfeeding. And she argues that motherhood and breastfeeding is certainly a status symbol of today. And think about it, in the US, where maternity leave is about 9 weeks, being able to stay at home and afford to be a mother is a luxury, and it signals one's socioeconomic status. So I guess, to define what characteristics are common for luxury guests, I would say we have to first define what luxury means today. Long story short, Elizabeth research and works of many others inspired my dissertation. So my dissertation concerned itself that I'm interested to learn what shapes consumption behavior for those who have achieved financial independence on their own. And as I mentioned, literature is quite rich with research on aristocrats, loyal industrialists, and generational wealth. Veblen pretty much defined it for us. However, the shift in how people create wealth has significantly changed. So today, 75% of individuals made their fortunes themselves, in comparison to 20, 30 years ago, when 80% of wealth was actually inherited. So if you just think on top of your mind about the world's wealthiest people, you're probably thinking Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, et cetera. You're not thinking the Gettys, the Pritzkers, the Annenbergs, or the Astors. Yeah, so the shift of how people are making money has changed. And what my research findings are showing so far, as I said, it's too early to talk, but there are some big differences in what shapes consumption of individuals that create wealth on their own versus the ones that inherit wealth. And my research also confirms Elizabeth's hypotheses. They're not spending money on what we think, the luxury goods, conspicuous consumption, and materialism. They're pursuing something very different, which what I call for now cultural capital. But stay tuned.
Well, you famously wrote that a service without a context is becoming just a commodity. So can you please tell us what would be context in this context, and what is the meaning of this magical word?
Oh yeah, that is, I think when I was finding the windmills known as rating agency, I was very rebellious during this time of my career, and I still believe in it very strongly. Evidence suggests that every customer, especially in luxury and the customer segment that I actually refer to, wants to be treated as a unique human being, as an individual with different needs under different circumstances. Well, that's what luxury is, to actually recognize that. So we deliver these luxury experiences by recognizing this uniqueness, the circumstances or the context, and then acting upon it. Yet rating agencies, which award stars, diamonds, etc., require adherence to sometimes very prescriptive service standards, which don't necessarily always take context into account. So for instance, one of the service standards required by one of the agencies is to deliver room service order within 20 minutes. And on the first sight, that sounds pretty good. You're like, that's reasonable. However, what if a guest only orders a cup of coffee on their way to work? Should it take 20 minutes? Probably not. But what if they order a 3-course meal to be executed right? It might take much longer than those 20 minutes. So here, this is what I'm talking about, the context. It's really, really important. Well, the problem with prescriptive service standards, at least on the level that we are operating at in the culture of our guests, is that once the standard is created, it becomes a goal and almost a rule. It limits creativity and original thinking, and it's a path to say, we've always done it that way. It's a standard. It doesn't allow people to I would say, question it. And I've seen this many, many times where, a standard became a rule or the ceiling. So now I think there's certainly some hotels that would greatly benefit if they pay attention to these standards, because it would raise the bar. But on our levels, it just simply doesn't make sense. So instead of rating agency, our guests set standards that we delivered based on the context, not prescription.
So everybody speaks about authentic experiences. These words have almost been worn off from often inauthentic use. Why are some hospitality companies able to provide authentic experiences, and why are others doomed to fakeness?
Great question. Well, I may have been influenced by this amazing philosopher in my epistemology class, Professor Antony from Athens. But I think, the doomed freakiness certainly comes from lack of definition. What is it that we mean by authentic? Is it authentic to the brand? Is it authentic to the culture? Is it authentic to destination? Or is it attending to the needs of individual? Or is it attending to something completely else that I didn't think about it? So as an example, in Dorchester Collection, we pride ourselves to be the caretakers of cultural landmarks, which are our hotel. When you wake up at the Dorchester, you certainly know you're in London. When you dine in Polo Lounge, you know you're in Hollywood. When you enter Hotel Eden, you know you're experiencing La Dolce Vita of Rome. So you could argue that we provide that authentic experiences as you relate to a certain destination and its high culture. But on the other hand, you have hotels that practice different strategy and are equally successful and authentic. For instance, bigger brands may prefer to be brand authentic, not culturally authentic, because that's what matters to their guests. You may go to ultra luxurious, beautiful hotel in a skyscraper of Dubai, which offers nothing authentic to location, yet is recognizable and authentic from the brand perspective. So as you said, inauthentic use of authenticity, from my perspective, probably comes from the lack of understanding what is it that we mean by it.
So we all know that relationships are essential to authentic experiences, and they also take time. Are you ever concerned at all that competition could copy your best practices?
Great question. Well, remember when you asked me what is it that I do, I forgot to mention that probably 30 to 40% of my day is dedicated to making reservations for our guests, calling in favors internally and externally, connecting our guests with other employees or other influencers, having breakfast, lunch, or dinner conversation with our guests. And it seems like this relationship, it's not something that can be microwaved, or it can be done on a speed dating site. You have to truly invest your time. So second part of my dissertation is dedicated to relationship marketing practices brands need to deploy in order to capture the hearts and mind of the clientele I'm focusing on. The entrepreneurs, athletes, captains of industries, artists, creatives, thinkers, movers, and shakers. So far, I have not seen many good examples where companies can institutionalize relationships. It is something that cannot be copied, yet it has to be part of organizational culture, and it not only has to be a business priority, but it has to be a personal priority. You need to hire people that love building relationships, that love talking to others, but also know what to do with the insights as that relationship is being built. So over the last year, I led a project with a company called Turnbull and Asser, which is an iconic English suit shirt maker on Savile Road. And Turnbull and Asser is a royal warrant holder. They dress British royal family, they dress Winston Churchill, and of course, all James Bonds. Their business, just like ours, really depends on the depth of relationship they have with their clients, as their brand loyalty is many times passed from a generation to a generation. And similar to Patek Philippe slogan, which says, you merely look after it for the next generation. So yes, I think some of the ideas and actions that we are implementing will be copied, but that's okay. I don't think you can copy loyalty. I don't think you can copy generosity. I don't think you can copy cycle of reciprocity, which are all the results of building a two-way relationship.
Well, now moving on to the technological aspect of the business. So basically, you have famously wrote in many of your papers about technological efficiency and how it can actually help a business to identify what is going wrong or what is going on in operations, but it actually cannot tell us why. So can you please describe how you met Metis, great technological device, and actually how does technological efficiency is combined with human creativity and intelligence?
Of course. Well, I met Metis's mother. I call her mother, even though, well, she likes that. Through a mutual friend in 2014. Her name is Kyle Ritchie, who became a friend, mentor, and certainly a role model. Beautifully elegant and extremely, extremely smart lady. As I said, what I love about Kyle, in addition to her big idea behind Metis, was her elegance, sophistication, ideas, intellectual curiosity, professional experience, as well as intellect. So when I met Kyle, and she presented the concept of Metis to me, which was at a time, just being developed and it's a beta stage, I said, say no more, I'm in. I love what you do, I love who you are, and I want to follow. So I think it's important that, when you're doing something, it's important to believe in the project and the product that you're buying. But more importantly, you should be aligned and appreciate it and admire the people who are actually behind it. So Metis had it all. So we embarked on this exciting journey to understand the wisdom of crowds. Metis analyzed our TripAdvisor reviews, our social media posts, as well as our internal survey results, which can be quite overwhelming to do it by hand. We learned so much about our guests. We learned a lot about ourselves, and even more, we learned a lot about our competition. And what I love about Kyle's vision about Metis is that she took no shortcuts. Her and her husband, David, invested a lot of capital, their economic capital, in creating this cutting-edge machine learning capabilities. But unlike many companies that actually stopped there, they invested even more in connecting what machine says to their expertise and professional experience in the context of services, especially in the luxury level. Kyle and David, before Metis, were known for these famous Ritchie standards, Ritchie reports. Actually, they invented 5-star standards before they became popular. And they were behind service success of many luxury brands such as Four Seasons, Peninsula, and of course, Ritz in Paris. So Kyle and David always looked beyond data, and that's what I really loved about them. Machine learning can provide you a clue in a very fast way, but then it was up to humans to connect those dots, put the clue into a context, tell a story, and suggest the ways in which we can address that. Our collaboration, which is still going on, it resulted in 3 articles that were published in Harvard Business Review, as well as extensive story written about our collaboration in BuzzFeed. So I think that speaks to the power of Metis and a combination of both machine and humanity.
So what do you think, how do luxury guests perceive the company studying their behavior as a genuine effort or yet another snooping intrusion? Where is the fine line? Are luxury guests willing to trade privacy for enhanced experiences? Is it a good idea to introduce virtual assistants in luxury context, for example?
Well, that's a really good question. Well, from my experience, as well as feedback from our guests, as well as the research findings, I'm finding that guests are more upset when they know we have information, but we don't use it to better their experience. It is a common knowledge that if you own an iPhone, use Uber, or on social channels, that you're constantly sharing your data and privacy. We all know that, yeah? That's a risk that we are willing to take for the conveniences that we get. So just look at Instagram, for example. It listens to your conversation, and all of a sudden you're having a conversation about moving, and tomorrow you get an ad about the couch. So we know that we're being listened. So people are very well aware of that, especially the clientele that we're catering to. So guests are aware that we have a lot of data points, but what they don't really like is that if we don't use those data points to make their experience seamless. And that's when I kind of seeing friction. You know, they trust our brands, they volunteer information. We don't snoop around, we don't go around their garbage. What they give us, we better use. So for instance, if we know the guest is arriving on a certain flight because their assistant, travel agent, or whoever tells us that, and then we don't ensure the room is ready in time because we're here by check-in is at 3 o'clock, they feel that what's the point of giving you this data if you are not doing anything with it? So that's when the whole privacy thing, I think, becomes an issue where we are not doing something to better their experience. And in terms of virtual assistants, you know, I think it really depends on the context. Our guests usually have an infrastructure of people working for them, usually have multiple assistants, travel agents, concierge companies that are there to make their life easier and more productive. So for our particular culture of guests that we cater to, having a virtual assistant would pretty much be a waste of time as well as money, and it would add to their frustration levels because you have to get used to how to use it. You know, it's not a human, it can't do everything you tell her. However, you know, I still think that there is some brands that the culture of guests that they are marketing to would certainly benefit from it.
Well, as mentioned and in some of your papers, you have incorporated some other brands within the properties in order to enrich the infrastructure and elegance within the property, but also increase the retention rate that technology told you that should be kind of better. So can you tell us why you think that this brand partnership is crucial at the luxury level, and what are the benefits for the brands, but for the customers as well?
Sure. Well, you know, I would say the success of brand partnership depends on a few things. It could be a hit, it could be a miss, or it could be a non-event very easily. I think the best brand partnerships really occur when the two brands shared very similar values, similar organizational culture, as well as cater to the similar customer base that actually shares the same values too. At the end of the day, brand partnership should serve a certain purpose. And from my perspective, it should serve a purpose to enhance your current customer experience and expose your brand to the new guests that may have a potential of becoming yours. And as I mentioned earlier, we started partnering with Turnbull and Astor at first simply from strategy and guest experience perspective, but as we dig deeper, we see that their top clients are our top clients. So it's a no-brainer. Our organizational cultures are very much aligned. We're both privately owned. Our owners are actually clients of each other. So again, we're so much aligned. So brand partnership like this, it's, as I said, something that we are certainly pursuing. You know, I think in business, successful brand partnership require a lot of work. And I would say before embarking on such journey, I would do a strategic analysis of values, culture, client needs, ownership structure, and ensure they're as aligned as they possibly be before you embark on this very, very long journey that if it's not aligned, are going to be very, very difficult to execute, and it will create frustrations on both levels.
We're all keen on knowing how can one, as you say, master excellence with elegance?
Well, you know, mastering excellence with elegance is my personal motto, and it's my personal brand tagline. I use this tagline to describe how I approach anything in life that I do. I developed it through a self-discovery process through my certification for becoming a coach for Gallup Strengths Finder. You're basically tasked to create your brand tagline based on who you are and what your strengths are. So that's where it came from, and I really has been sticking to it ever since. So when I say mastery, I refer to deepening one's knowledge. Yeah, in my opinion, what it means for me, it is having the luxury to pursue education and continue to learn. Mastery, as I adopted from Sarah Lewis, is doing something near perfect, yet understanding there's always more to learn. It's really what keeps me grounded, and it protects me from arrogance. Elegance is doing it with attention to detail, with striving to be near perfect. It's about not being satisfied with average and being certainly okay to stand out. Elegance is doing that with simplicity. I believe that to artfully express yourself, one has to do it in simple terms. I don't think knowledge should be collected to intimidate others and show somebody how smart you are, yet true knowledge has to be masterfully disseminated so everybody can understand it. So, in addition to my tagline, I am driven very much for the past 15 years of when I discovered this poem by William Henry Channing, and the poem is called My Symphony. And I adopted it to kind of what my version of the favorite verses are that drive my daily and weekly and monthly and yearly goals. So here are some of the favorite verses. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement, not fashion. To be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich. To study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act friendly. This is my symphony.
Thank you for this wonderful answer. Now to get back to our neck of the woods, we hear that Croatia is a trendy destination that people want to check off their bucket lists. So where do you see Croatia's realistic standing on the table of luxury destinations?
Great topic. I'm glad you're taking me back home. So this is a topic of many different conversations with many of our guests and our friends and my friends. Especially during the pandemic. This year, Croatia was definitely on the top of the list because I think it was one of the few countries that allowed people to come in. And as you said, Croatia is on top of mind. Everybody describes it as beautiful, wants to go, curious to learn more about it, and interested to make that move. However, at least the people that I'm speaking to, again, it's not the masses and it's not everybody. So put this into context. It doesn't mean it's true. And those individuals would be big spenders, also cultural influencers. They're choosing to go to Croatia on their own terms. And what I mean by it, I hate to say it, we don't necessarily have a reputation to have the best service culture in the world. And our infrastructure of true high-end establishments is very limited. I just learned about Hotel Maslina, which RIT alumni is building. And I really hope that we're going to have more and more infrastructure and establishments that attract such clientele. But it's not only the Hotel Maslina that will give confidence to today's wealthy to visit. It is the events that appear on the billionaire's cultural and social calendar. It is variety of economic and gastronomic choices. It is art and architecture. It is wellness, well-being, sustainability, social activism, transportation infrastructure, all of which have to be seamless at the highest level. Unfortunately, I hear too many times, the only way I'll do Croatia is on my yacht when I hire my own private chef, rely on my staff to serve me and do it my own way. So it's not something that, I would say it's good. It's great to have beautiful yachts going around and sailing around Adriatic, but I would prefer this type of individuals to actually step on our beautiful islands and beautiful coast and explore it a little bit more. And one thing to remember, in these circles, word travel fast. So if one person doesn't have good experience, it reaches so many in lightning speed. And individuals that I'm speaking about is 0.1% of population, yet that population owns 80% of all global assets. So I think Croatia has a chance to capture this market. They want to be there, they want to go, it's on the hot list, but it has to be done, it cannot be done without careful planning and cutting edge strategy. I think we have so many beautiful islands and places on the coast, and one should be truly dedicated to exactly to this cause. So there is a challenge for RIT students. benchmark the best destinations that 0.1% of the world population go, because what they do have is so-called halo effect. Yeah, you get a few of them, you're going to get many, many other people that want to be in the places where they are. So if you just focus on, benchmarking locations where they go, and it's really not that hard to figure it out. There are 5 or 6 of those: Saint-Tropez, Hamptons, Cabo, Porto and things like that. There is they move in a very interesting social circles. So challenge for RIT students is, where in Croatian beautiful, beautiful heritage can we actually find a place that would be at a very, very high level so we can attract this crowd on our terms, not theirs.
So now to our current situation. This pandemic has taken a toll on everyone. What is it that customers need the most right now? How do you see luxury hospitality developing in the next few years, both for business and leisure segments?
Great question. This pandemic has been obviously heartbreaking, especially for hospitality industry. And I think before we speak about what guests need, I think it's important that we talk about what hospitality leaders and industry professionals need. I'm kind of like getting emotional as I'm saying that, but so many of my friends have lost their jobs. So many of my friends have lost their identity. They work with a company for 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden they were made redundant. They were forced into retirement. Their identity and their career has been shattered. So I think that as a hospitality leaders, before we start taking care of and looking after our guests, we should certainly take the time to acknowledge the hardship that our colleagues have been through and do everything to better their circumstances. Provide them with opportunities to restart their careers, be open-minded, and help others succeed and help others find their ways. So I think that's definitely the first thing we should do. In terms of the guests, I feel, now that I feel that I'm seeing this in our company and I'm seeing this with the behavior, what it comes down to is trust in the brand that people have, and then our ability to personalize that their stay to whatever their level of security or insecurity is. During the pandemic, I really worked hard on the strategy of not listening to the noise on the media, not listening to the trends, but truly being focused on our guests, their needs, and observing their behavior. And actually, at the end, it ended up being pretty good, because we didn't jump on the bandwagon with doing what everybody was telling us to do in the media. You got to do this, you have to change, you have to clean, you have to, all these processes and procedures that you have to put in place. At our level, our guests assume we always kept our hotels clean. If we all of a sudden had these, protocols that we're putting on a website and telling people how we're cleaning, I think it would be a sign that we haven't done that before. We have, and there are certain, airlines probably could have increased their cleanliness standards. We all know that, but hotels in our levels certainly, had certain room for improvement, but we had a lot of these processes in place. So, cleanliness aside, what we're seeing with the guest behavior is that those that want to travel, we had them from, the day one when the pandemic started, March 15, when everything would close. We had guests that quarantined in our hotels, and think about the trust that gives, I guess, to the guests, that you're quarantining in a hotel where you're going to be with a lot of people, because somebody will come and service your room, somebody will come and bring you breakfast. You'll be around other people. So they trusted us that we're going to do everything we can to protect them. So that was huge confidence for us. I also see that the guests that don't go out, people who don't want to travel, they just don't go anywhere. They stay at home. It's funny, yesterday I was at one of our restaurants, and I saw this really famous actress, and she walked by me, and she said to her friend, this is the first time I went out since March 15 with my son. So again, a few things to think about it. Obviously, it's a big thing for her, but more importantly, she chose our restaurant to make that first move. So she was really comfortable. In terms of other trends that we're seeing is, people are booking very, very last minute now. So you can't really forecast. You can't really know what's happening around the corner. You have to really plan for your staffing guidelines. You have to be very agile and last minute changes. And they're also coming to celebrate special occasions. So it doesn't matter how beautiful your house is and how many square footage you have and where you live, people get sick of being at home and they won't change. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. But as I said, my first thing is let's extend our hand and our help to our hospitality leaders and fellow hoteliers who have really, really suffered during this time.
Now to educational background and also continuation of your educational aspect. So as we know, you passionately believe in education and you're currently doing doctorate at Pepperdine Graziadio Business School. So why does it make sense to study hospitality and what can our industry teach the world?
Well, I think, we're an incredible industry. Travel connects people beyond any other activity. And during the pandemic, it is certainly what people miss the most. And it is something that people are looking forward the most as soon as this is over. Not being able to travel, not having the freedom to cross borders or visit countries, it's kind of, you miss part of yourself. It's fulfilling for your soul. It's fulfilling for your cultural capital. It's just something that gives us so much pleasure in life. And of course, hotels and hospitality, it's part of it. It enables travel. It makes it better. It makes it effortless. And there are many ways to look at what hospitality can teach the world. But what I'm mostly intrigued is in the way which we look after our guests. Caesar Ritz said, there is nothing more intimate than looking after someone's sleep. And, I think that's really true. And we forget the privilege, especially in hotels, as to how intimate and what intimate relationship do we have with our guests. So over the course of my career, I studied what hospitalities can teach hospitals and healthcare. I saw that how hospitality inspired managerial sciences to study employee-centric organizational behaviors, and so many more. But in my own little world, I'm currently drawing parallels between luxury hospitality and philanthropy. And I see very, very big parallels between these two fantastic industries that are, philanthropy, deciding which social cause do you support and how do you make a world a better place. So it's a little bit too early to talk about it because it's something that it's emerging from my findings, but there are so many parallels. So stay tuned on that one.
Sadly, our interview is coming to an end. So to conclude, what advice would you give us, the young hospitality enthusiasts? How do we follow your footsteps?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if following my footstep is an ideal scenario. I think I shared with you many positive highlights of my career, but I can assure you that for every success, there has been at least 5 to 10 failures and disappointments. My success required sacrifices, which many people wouldn't be willing to take on. What I consider success may be a complete failure from somebody else's perspective. I work 10 to 12-hour days. I actually never stop working. I rarely take holidays, and it's because I love what I do, and I don't really find it to be work, whether it's school or the research or, my day-to-day operations that I run with the hotels, talking to people. I really don't find it to be work. And, people on the sidelines might be looking at me, and I get that a lot, from my friends in Croatia, like, can you just tell me how you're personally? I said, well, that's it. This is my life. I love it. So they might disagree that I have a great life and that I'm successful because they see me always working and they call you workaholic. I'm always on, even though when I take vacation, I travel with at least one laptop, just in case. Obviously phones and everything else, but I think I'm going to have to now travel with a, Zoom light as well. So, I think people have to figure it out what really works for them. And before they decide to follow somebody, define what success truly means for you. So I think it's okay to have role models, but at the end, it is what is it that you want to do? And if I could give everybody advice, I would say dream big, don't see obstacles, have the courage to live your life in your own terms, define your own rules, push the boundaries, take time to get to know yourself before you're trying to get to know others. Don't imitate, and be comfortable to be misunderstood.
Anna, thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful interview. This was such a treat for the mind, and you just blew my mind again. And it will take time to digest everything. I'm sure that we will listen to this many times and catching details. We wish you so much success with your PhD. We are staying tuned. I'm personally hanging on the edge of my seat for that because I'm really, really interested in this aspect of psychology that you will bring. And I cannot wait for new innovations that will come out of that, because I think that this will be a platform for a huge leap forward, knowing you and also knowing your company. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much. And ladies, thank you for wonderful questions. Very, very thoughtful, very personalized. Really much appreciate all the time that you have spent preparing for this interview. Domagoj, thank you so much for having me. Wishing success to all RIT students. May you be successful in your own terms, and may you do what makes you happy. So thank you so much.